district now from the connections I've made and what I've learned from all of you and, some of the practices that we've tweaked or changed. And so sometimes giving that extra outside of your role improves what you're doing in your role.
So true.
Definitely a lot of win for me in participating in this. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I agree. It's been really good. Full circle. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. I'll put okay, I'm just gonna go through we'll do a quick roll call. So I know not everyone was able to make this call, but we'll just go through it just so we have it down. I'm just gonna go first name, but I'm just gonna go through the list that we have on the agenda. So Nora, Bernie.
Nora's not with us.
Lori. All right.
Present.
Like a loud motorcycle going by. Anne.
Present.
Karen.
Present.
Colette.
Colette couldn't join us.
Marissa.
Present.
Marie.
Present.
Christine.
Present.
Lance.
Lance is on vacation.
Okay.
Really fast, who is on the Meet iPhone?
Hi, that's me, Melissa Nicolakakos. I just got logged in. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, you were next.
Perfect.
That's perfect timing.
No, that's perfect
I'm
timing.
here.
I'm just gonna rename you, so because we don't know who me is, so that's perfect.
This is
I'll
true.
just rename you.
Okay.
Melissa Nicolakakos is here. Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Doug. No.
Here.
Okay, well, not that, but you're here.
Oh,
Sorry, I should say the last
next
name.
up.
Doug Reisig
there's
is
Doug.
no longer with MQEC, so
Okay, but he's
he
out.
won't. Yeah, he wouldn't be with us.
Okay, Melissa Romano.
She's
probably
on her
not-
honeymoon.
Nice. All right, Doug. We got here. Nicole.
She's coming in right now.
Oh, perfect. Okay, and then Allison. Is she joining us?
TBD.
Okay, she might be joining us. She was on a call earlier, so hopefully she can pop in. All right, well, we'll just move on to our big moment of the meeting. I'm going to turn over to you, Marie, and you can you can share the latest report from OPI about the targeted interventions. And I hope you guys all had a moment to peruse through, but it is linked. If you scroll down from the agenda, hopefully you guys all had a chance to glance through, but if not, it's there and you can take a look as Marie is talking to us about it. So I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Do you guys want me to share a screen on it, or would that be better for the recording? Maybe too. I will do that. Okay. That's how my brain works. So I will pull that up. So I know some of you glanced at last year's compared to this year's, and you can see it doubled in size because we have so much more information. We can actually do some analysis, and it's so funny now that we've done this for 2 years. Now I just ask more questions and go, oh, now I want to know this. I want to know this. So we're already talking about, let's get some feedback on what other questions we should put on our data collection while not also increasing the administrative burden on the schools for that information. So I want to give a huge kudos to Kimberly Evans, who's our data research analyst on the early learning team with us at OPI. She helped update, gather, call every school, set up all the collections to the point that some people don't necessarily love her, but we got the information that we were legislatively required to get, and she did a fantastic job. I'm not going to read this whole report to you, obviously. I think some key highlights would be most important. You all know the background of how we got where we are in terms of the evaluation methodology and all the monitoring that we do. So I don't get dizzy with me. I'll go slow on my scrolling. So I am on page 4 of this, and I'm just linking directly off of what McCall shared out and what's posted on the Board of Public Ed website. But we did have some really fantastic data coming out of this year, and we won't quite see that full effect when it comes to 3rd grade proficiency until, like, we have little pieces now. We have one piece in there from the very first Jumpstart year. That's the only data we have available right now in terms of math proficiency. And if you read it, you'll also see there's some disclaimers because at first it kind of gives you a only 7% were proficient, but we're only talking about the kids that qualified for this program. So it wasn't the top kiddos that we're looking at. So we'll kind of dig in there. And it'll be good to see maybe 7% now, but maybe it'll increase by 2%, 10% over the course of the year. So we're just excited for that. Overall participation in Jumpstart increased by 57%. So a lot more students getting that summertime. We know part of that was the first year we had that July 1 start date with all that fun, but that's 700 more students that are being served in the summer for the minimum of 120 instructional hours over 4 weeks. So excited to see that. We also had overall classroom-based programming improvement on at least one literacy skill. So to have 95% of kids have that much growth or that much improvement, even just one, we know if it's oral language and that's the one, we know what that means for them down the road. So just excited to see that. And then this year, our biggest lift, I would say, is to rapidly improve how we get students accessing the home-based learning. That how it was done the first year, no state's ever done this program the way we're doing it. And Utah and other states, families sign up. So we had to come up with a new mechanism, and we did a much better job getting kids on there. Still not where we want to be, but overall much, much better. Okay, pause real quick. That's just an overview of all the pieces. You know the evaluation methodologies. Your names are linked in here. But we wanted to make sure we had some graphics in here also because I'm a visual learner, and it was just really nice to see. Last year we had, I want to say 3,588 students participate overall. And this year we're over 5,000 students, and that's not duplicating students that are in multiple programs. So 5,000 unique students in programming across Jumpstart, classroom-based, and home-based. So huge growth on that and just access for kiddos. And you'll see how many districts. We had 35 districts do Jumpstart this year. 98 districts are doing the classroom-based, and then 28 on that home-based. We had some go up, some go down, and we'll see all those comparative numbers down below also. Okay, I'm gonna scroll. Really, initially, we weren't gonna have the comparison of years, but we really wanted to see the impact of our staff's work and their recruitment efforts of schools really going, okay, we want to commit, we want to improve, we want to bring this programming in. So you'll see the jumps in the different categories across the board there from classroom-based, home-based, and Jumpstart. So about 300 more in classroom-based in a year. Home-based. So home-based is a unique situation, and we'll get down to it more in the participation below. And then, so that's how many students and then how many districts. So 15 more districts jumped on the bandwagon with Jumpstart, 9 more for classroom-based, and then 9 more for home-based. At any point, if anyone has questions, please do not hesitate to interrupt me. It doesn't bother me at all.
Marie, I was just gonna say, for what it's worth, I do like seeing the data from each year. I think it's nice to see sort of the work from year to year and well, in this case, seeing the increased numbers. So I do think that's actually important information to include in a report like
I
this.
agree, McCall. I was going to say, Marie, to pass that on to Kimberly and to the other report folks, is that is really, really helpful. Yeah, thank you for doing that. Yeah, it's just funny that you said that, McCall, because I was thinking that same thing. So
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Marie,
Yep.
do we have any data on how many districts? I mean, I know I could go hand count it because it's in the report later, but how many districts did all 3 both years? So how
I
many
don't have a
districts
separate
took
table for that,
100%?
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just love to know how many districts took 100% opportunity, 100% of the 2 years available.
yeah, we can go tally that, but that wasn't included in this part
Yeah.
yet. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
So here you'll see just the Jumpstart overall enrollments. Down below, I believe we have the comparison of one year to the next. This was just for this year. We wanted to, again, just show that basic. But when we have schools that are willing to offer it to even 4 kids and find the value in that, that's a big deal. As someone who grew up in small town Montana with 12 kids in my entire grade, like, I love that. That's exciting for me. And really having the names there because that's a requirement within the legislation also. Here we broke it down by grade level, so prior to kindergarten, so those students that are rising preschoolers going into kindergarten, we had an increase in how many of those were included in that Jumpstart programming. Again, prior to first, every grade level jumped a fair amount, which is really exciting to see. And this is just participation. So down below, the next session's on efficacy. So then we go to classroom-based programming, participation data, the number of districts participating, and the number of enrolled students. In this first part of the report, it just has their current year enrolled students. And again, we do have some with only one student participating, but you think of sometimes those small communities, they might not have any other opportunities for them. So at least it's one more kiddo who is getting that opportunity to participate.
Marie, can I ask what that might look like? When I was going through this, I was wondering,
Yeah.
like, for the 1 and 2, or just those really small cohorts, like, what would that look like? Are they separate in a classroom, or are they getting one-on-one care? Like,
A lot of time
They
it's
deliver
combined
it
with the kindergarten, or like even the prior to kindergarten and first grade, depending on how small it is. And so when they're doing that instruction, they're just making sure they're hitting the standards for those kiddos in that environment. So obviously not as common, but we do have some where they might have those programmings like that. And they just kind of embed in part of that day, and then they aren't considered kindergartners, they're early targeted interventions. All right, home-based learning. So you'll see in our participation data, we have 1,500 licenses per what was written into I think it was the fiscal note. And you'll see that asterisk right there. We wanted to make sure that we maximize the 1,500 licenses. So come January, we notify districts. So let me rewind even. Way back in July, August, schools told us how many licenses they would need. So it's based on the law, it was first come, first serve. So we allocated all those licenses as requested by those districts, and then continued to communicate saying, hey, we want to make sure we get kids on there, and we will release licenses if they're not used come January. Some districts were like, yeah, there's no way, for a myriad of reasons of why they weren't using those, or they had less kids eligible as they anticipated. So in January, we did release licenses because we had a waiting list of districts with students that wanted to participate. So that's why this number is not at 1,500, even though that's what was written into it. And we actually were able to release more based on that lack of participation, but also bringing in more that were eligible. And so last year, I know it's set up above, we only had 129 students that had logged in to the platform. So even though we sent all the information, the schools did what they needed to, it was a new program, districts had what they had for information. We were really having this weird dynamic, I'll say, of who's communicating what. So we refined our internal processes, tried to make it easier for everybody and making sure we have the right information. And since home-based learning is such a key part of that family engagement component, we were making sure that the Waterford Liaison had better direct connection with those eligible students and those families. So with that, we did get 565 students who at least logged on to the program. And then I'll show you down below in the efficacy data what that looked like in terms of their participation in minutes. And then you'll see the districts. So this table has the initial number of students enrolled. So Anaconda Public Schools said we need 45 licenses. And then the final number, so they dropped a license. And then out of those 44 that had a license for them, 21 students had logged on and participated. And then you'll see how that continues for districts as you go down. So we have Bozeman, for an example, or I think that was our largest pot, was 446 reserved. It ended up going down to 426 with 147 actively participating.
Marie, sorry if I missed this in the report, but can you remind me again how much the license is? Is this
$1,000 per student?
okay? Thank you.
Yeah. And then I'll keep going without making you dizzy. And we have the comparison tables down below, just so you know, from year to year. All right. So then we also, part of the requirement is sharing who did not participate in early targeted intervention. And so we use this list ourselves as outreach. How can we help you? What are some barriers we can help you overcome? What are some local communities we can connect you with to see if you want to bring in programming or partner up? So we had 172 districts that did not participate. That doesn't mean that they didn't intend to. Sometimes they intended to and they just had no eligible students. for whatever reason they couldn't get a teacher, whatever it might be, then they ended up not offering the program, or maybe they only were going to offer home-based and then families chose to not participate in that. So this isn't a straight list of they didn't intend to, they could have tried, or they just didn't have the interest in their community or space. For example, Shelby, they want to offer these programs. They literally do not have space to do it. So they have chosen not to do that. So that was one of the things that when we did a school visit there, he's like, it would be a $5 million add-on to our building to be able to have the classroom space for that. So just another consideration. It's not just hiring a teacher, getting the supplies and materials. That space and actual facility piece is actually a big one sometimes too. And we do have communities that say we don't want to compete with our local preschools that are private and our daycare situations as well. So that's why they don't offer it yet, or the Head Start. So those are some reasons that we have heard that they are not offering those programming. So when it comes to efficacy of the programs, this is a challenge to translate 200 some data points from districts, all the grade levels, 3 different programs, and say, but did it work? Because every district is using different progress monitoring tools, different metrics for even screening them in, different qualifiers for what does eligibility mean. So we have 2 districts that are less than 7 miles apart, and they have different eligibility requirements to get into their program. And so some families are going, oh, we didn't get in over here, but can we be screened to go over there so that we can get in? And sometimes they do qualify in that neighboring community and not over there, which is great that there's at least a program for them to attend. So when we look at what we can ask districts, because we don't collect any student data when it comes to the efficacy of their programs, they submit their own data, and I'll kind of go through what that looks like until it gets to MAST. When it gets to the statewide assessment, that's when I have access to data to share how students are doing in terms of English language proficiency and in the future numeracy, of course. So I don't think anyone's going to be surprised here. So Jumpstart, our summer programming, consistent attendance was one of the indicators of the strongest growth for our students that actually were frequently going there. And since, again, we have all schools with different calendars, some do 6 weeks, some do 4 weeks, some do 8 weeks, that metric of how many hours is the right amount of hours isn't something that we have right now. They're all just meeting the minimum. Out of eligible students, 24% of students that were enrolled in Jumpstart are no longer eligible for ETI. So in some ways you could think of that, they graduated out, like they made that growth, they improved so much that they no longer met the eligibility requirements. So it's like a good thing, your numbers go down, but that's because the intervention is working.
Marie, can I
yeah.
ask a question about that? So when I filled out that form, I'm just curious if the third grade, like rising third graders who literally none of them are eligible because they've aged out, are they part of that 24%, or like where are they represented, those kiddos?
That's a great question. So that is not part of this 24%. That would be on the K-1-2 that would have the opportunity to move on. I can verify that, but I don't even think we asked that of those third graders because they can't. So yeah.
Right. Okay.
But that is where it came to the measuring growth. So again, growth looks different with every district's different metrics of what does that mean. So we wanted to have it open enough where districts can say, yes, they did or did not show growth. And so out of summer Jumpstart participating, we had 66% of those participating students show measurable gains from their initial screener to their fall literacy assessment. And remember, this is not this year, summers, this was last summer's. So they took however they screened in and then compared that to their fall literacy benchmark data, and 66% of those students showed measurable gains. Now that is up again to the district, because if we're all using different metrics for what does growth mean, they're making that determination on if that's measurable growth, which makes the data fun to analyze. Of those students who did not demonstrate that measurable growth, districts indicated that they actually maintain, which all of us educators know that if you can maintain and you don't have that summer slide, that's a big deal too, because then you're not starting over and having to revert back and reteach some things there as well. Efficacy of the program. So asking districts, like, was doing Jumpstart a positive experience for your students and staff? Overwhelming majority, 95% with agree and strongly agree, say that it had positive effects on their students. I don't know of any program that I've ever seen that say 95% of districts are happy that they get to do this for students. So that's pretty exciting in terms of a program perspective. Yeah, so anything about summer jumpstart efficacy that I can help
I
with?
have one more wondering.
Yeah, oh,
So just for my own, so thinking of the rising third graders, it has been a real struggle for me in the data process there because they are screening using
Yep.
one of the eligible tools. And then what they do in the fall is no longer related to like that
Mhm.
same assessment system. So I feel like I'm very much comparing apples to oranges when I figure out that data. So
Yeah.
I would love to know what others are doing. I'm like trying to create my own little mashup between ExactPath and Early Bird and MCPS.
That's a great question. Yeah. I don't have that answer. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't have that answer, Doug. Sorry.
Okay.
I was just gonna put out another wondering, not necessarily to be answered today, but just curious if, as we go throughout the years, if we're able to like gather data, like kind of hone in on, okay, what assessments are most predictive of like third grade reading proficiency moving forward? What interventions, like you mentioned, oral language, like are we able to kind of funnel some of the data just to kind of see that impact in that way? Or you also mentioned like time spent in Jumpstart. Are we able to pull that apart and be like, most bang for your buck is blah hours per day? Just curious how we can kind of funnel the data to make more informed decisions moving forward, because this is awesome, but
Yeah.
just really broad in that way.
I know the researcher in you is coming out like, I want to know more, which I was like,
Yeah.
a great dissertation when that happens. But, you know, we don't get that level. We are collecting the areas in which students qualify when they submit the data on Infinite Campus. So if it's in oral language, if it's in oral reading fluency, and the different ones that this committee came up with for different qualifying areas. I can't say that every district does that in a consistent manner. They might just pick one and submit and move on because it's a lot of data entry. And I was that data entry person, so I get it. I think there's a lot of great questions that we don't have that level of data at the state level, because I think the districts would be very upset with us if we got to that level of making them do that. That doesn't mean we can't look at it in the future. And also, like, I'd love to see some like exit type interview situations of those families, and like now that we have more years, what does that mean? And we actually have great results in our parent feedback. Like some of our greatest survey responses are from the parents. So I'm excited to get to that. So I don't have great answers, but I always take notes. I'm like, yes, okay, what else can we ask? So then our first group of students that we could have any third grade math proficiency data on were summer 24-25. So now 2 summers ago, that participated in that first cohort of Jumpstart students. And I'm going to scroll really quick. Don't get dizzy, because I think it's important that you all know when this data will become available. So this is the very last page of the report. And we're like, because of course our legislators want to know, like, hey, are we getting our bang for our buck here? And I'm like, we don't know yet. Like, we've had this much out of this big long roadway. So what we do have with Jumpstart, this first group of students right here, we now have that data from the 24-25 school year. We will soon have the 25-26 mass data for this group right down here. So this next one right here, we will have that. But those other ones, remember, other than home-based learning, we need another year because it was prior to third, right? Prior to third, so we need that second year. And then you'll see when that data is available moving forward. So classroom-based are prior to kindergartners. We're not going to have mass data on those kiddos until 29-30, which is just like mind-blowing in some ways to think, oh, that's like 3 more years. But that's just how long it takes to get there. But it'll be really exciting to see, okay, those kiddos that were in that first group and second group of these cohorts, when that mass data will come out. And then
Marie,
I'm gonna, yes.
I think I'm gonna regret asking this question.
Yep.
Do we have any data? Because this makes really good sense to me. I like how you've set it up. Are we going to have any that shows kids for each of those grade bands who did all 3, for example? So
Yeah, when we get to that
intensity.
point, yes.
I mean, I know we can't yet because we only have this one little piece that's hit 25, 26 data, but
yeah.
okay.
We will be able to pull that level of reporting. So for this first round, when I did the data request, I specifically said our Jumpstart students, And then we also compared participating to non-participating because that's part of the requirements as well. And so then we will be able to disaggregate among the different programs for participating and non-participating, which actually really leads us well into that next part, Lori, because
Thank you.
at first this data feels like, oh, that's it. I don't know about you guys when you saw it, but I'm like, wait a second, it's okay because we still have students like this 120 hours of instruction out of these 11,402 Montana students with master reading results. So that's how many third graders took MAST in 24-25. And then out of those, 317 students participated in that 24-25 Summer Jumpstart Literacy Program. So that means we had 11,085 that did not participate, right? So when I go down here and we have our performance levels, here's all third grade students in math and ELA and where they laid out on the proficiency. I like to break it down by proficient or not. So I'm actually going to move down to this table. Hopefully you can all see that. So for all third grade students across the board that did or did not participate in Summer Jumpstart 24-25, 35.8% of those were proficient in ELA. Non-participants, so they did not participate in early targeted interventions that Jumpstart 24-25, 36.6% were proficient or advanced. And that means out of our 317 students that did participate in that one Summer Jumpstart program, 7.5% of those students were proficient. And if you look at the interpretive context below, I know you all understand this, but it did take me a second. Like, how do I explain that this is somewhat anticipated? Because in order to even participate in early targeted intervention programs, they had to meet eligibility requirements, which sometimes means they had to be in the bottom 10% of a district. And so this number could have been 0 had they not had that last Summer Jumpstart boost to get them into that third grade year to get into that next piece. So it'll be really interesting longitudinal data as we watch increased participation, across year participation, and how that affects our non-participating versus participating if we see that ratio changing at all. Any other questions or wondering do you have about this component? I can go down into the interpretive context more too if you'd like me to.
I think that's fantastic, Marie. I mean, if you look at it, not statistically using the
I know.
correct words here, right? But that predictability, none of them would have passed because that's why they were eligible.
Mhm.
And then 7.5% pass, throwing Jumpstart together for the first time at the last minute, trying to make it work. I mean, I don't know. I find that to be positive. And I think that this current summer, the next 2 summers will show even more.
Yeah, yep, I agree. And also, it's timing wise, it's a little interesting, right? That was the first year of math.
Right.
So now we have a couple years of that where teachers, I'm really excited for this year's data release. Like teachers are teaching standards that often weren't teaching before or assessing, or we have more information throughout the year. So it'll be really interesting to see how that continues. I love feedback on the interpretive context. Hopefully, I was trying to right size it for our legislators because if you had no education background and you look at this, you're like, wait, only 7.5% of kids are proficient. What are you guys actually doing? So I wanted to make sure it's really clear in what does that mean? And
Marie,
also
I'm
not
wondering,
in the
I
weeds. Go
appreciate
ahead.
what you're saying too, because I'm thinking that too, just when the questions come in session or just, other places too. I'm wondering, what does this look like? What does 23-24 mass data look like? I wonder if that's helpful. And I'm not suggesting that it's like, oh, one summer is, going to make this huge
Yeah.
dramatic difference, but I do caution this group as to how some of this information is shared without the thoughtful explanation behind it, even with the interpretive context explanation. If it's just going to be, I'm just looking at an end result, end number, then that might be
Yeah.
tricky. But you're very aware of it, and so I totally trust you to do that. But when this report lives out in OPI and someone's accessing it, what they'll see is that without understanding that thoughtfulness to it, because this is very promising, and it's also suggestive of, it's not just like a one-time intervention, like just thinking about, providing opportunity for students and children is over that long term. Once they get that jump start, then they're set up for success as they kind of move down the line. So if they only just got this at that place, then that's tricky. So I think you explained it incredibly well. Keep doing that to whoever
Okay,
asks.
thanks. I'm gonna pull this up before, and I know Lori's seen it because it was from my Northwest Mass time. So another like complexity to explaining this data is this was 24-25 when Mass started. And so we had that year of 23-24 where only 50% of our schools did Mass and the other, which was not counted toward any accountability or any of those pieces. And then 50% did Smarter Balance. And then we have Smarter before that. Of course, this is the longitudinal one, but I do think it's fair that we pull in those ELA, even just this with just ELA third grade, so we can watch that trends. I think that's a great idea. Thank you. And then also, I mean, NAEP is another one that we can look at too. I have those here and just kind of watch how that also goes. So see, every time I look at this, I'm like, we need more. All right. So then going on to classroom-based program efficacy, really great data coming out of what our districts are seeing with their students. So again, this is where we talked about the 95% of students demonstrated measurable growth and huge increase in participating students. And then again, that 67% of students no longer eligible for ETI programming. The nice thing about this one is this is all prior to kindergarten students. And so they didn't have the opportunity to, like, it was either they made it out of that classroom base and maybe they did home based or they did Jumpstart the following years. But out of our group of students, that 2,382, 67% of those showed enough growth that they wouldn't requalify based on the district's eligibility. Like, oh, sorry, that's a big one for me. And then districts are really liking having that classroom-based opportunity in their schools. I'm going to go down to some key observations. So again, we talked about 67% no longer needing that. So they're filling that gap and getting up to that benchmark that those districts are expecting, 96% approval rate. And out of that, 77% of districts strongly agreed that it was effective and they had high confidence in the program's implementation and outcomes. Another really like, they see it working. And like, I know we're all just like waiting for those numbers to tick up across the road and see that long-term outcomes, but time is going too slow on this one. Anything else on the classroom-based efficacy? Yes, of course, yeah. And Penn.
Okay, sorry, the researcher's gonna bring one more curiosity
Please.
out. And I'm looking at Christine and thinking about Allison, but just like curious if there's any way for us to be able to like highlight in the form of like a case study some of these districts. So it's not on maybe you guys at OPI or maybe
Yeah.
it's some like partnership for us.
Mhm.
I would love to replicate these districts that are, seeing
Yeah.
incredible results. And that might be a way to help us go from more broad to more concrete action if we were able to highlight some of these friends.
Yeah.
But
Yep. And
just throw that out
so
there.
yeah, that's wonderful. You can let me look into what we can and can't pull. We didn't tell the districts when they submitted that all of that would be, but I do think it's worth like Lori, do you want them to come research your school and see the amazing rate? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Great points on that. I'm going to jump down to the home-based programming efficacy. So to start here, I think you're all aware that we are utilizing the platform Waterford, and that was awarded through an RFP. And that's just continued. I think we just signed our third contract somehow. I can't even believe I've been here that long. We talked about what that participation looked like in the past and how we've been improving that. So out of the 565 students that were actively participating, and our threshold for that was they logged in and had some minutes. And you'll see on here a little bit more about what those minutes meant. We had 72 students that met the recommended amount of minutes, which is 1,500 across the school year threshold, so that they can make adequate growth. And so some of these things we're using Waterford data and research to determine what that means. So I was like, I need that broken down. So they had 5 different usage groups. And if it was less than 100 minutes on our students, they showed a 0.19 segment of growth in the platform. And I'm going to explain those segments down below because I had to dissect this to understand enough to put it in the report. So 147 students across the state met that less than 100 minutes and the average of 0.19 or 1,900 segments of growth. For the next usage group, which is between 100 and 499 minutes, they had 5,600 segments of growth and that was 223 students. So right now we're looking at over half of our students were less than 500 minutes of usage. And then you'll see how that continues up into 500 to 999 with 1 and 1200ths, and then 1000 to 1499, 1 and 7600 segments of growth. And then, like I said, the 72 that we're at that threshold of you need to do 1500 minutes of usage. But their average is actually 2.67, so 2 and 6700 segments of growth. So what does the segment mean? Because I had to ask because it doesn't make sense in what I know about measurement for me. So students take a diagnostic when they get on the platform, and it places them, whether they're in pre-reading, basic reading, or fluent reading. And those 3 sections of instruction, pre-reading, basic reading, and fluent reading, each have 3 sections within it. So there's 9 total segments along that progression. So pre-reading, segment 1, 2, 3, basic reading, 1, 2, 3, fluent reading, 1, 2, 3. So when we go down here, you'll see on this full spectrum of here's those 9 segments, and they determine 1 segment of growth, meaningful movement within one of the 9 structured reading segments. 2 segments of growth means that they had 1 full academic year of typical reading development. And if they grew more than 3, they had accelerated growth well beyond the grade level benchmarks. So when you look at those 3 segments put together based on wherever they were in that placement, these color codes, so end of pre-K, this is where they assume students should be based on their research in this yellow window. Red here at the kindergarten, purple, end of first, and orange, I gotta zoom in, end of second. So this is how you read this chart and what segments of growth means. If you need more help understanding that, please ask and I'll work through it with you, because it's just different than what we're used to, at least what I'm used to. And every platform kind of has their own. I know RIT scores from this platform, percentiles over here, but this one was new for me. Continue. Okay. So that being said, when we look up here, the trend line is that if they did 1500 minutes of, they saw a 2.67. So when we go down to what they expect, they want at least 2 segments of growth, and that's more than 1 full academic year of growth on that platform. And then continuing down the way.
I have a
And that's
question.
again, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Marie. So is that calculation, that comes from like Waterford or from like
Yes.
their own kind of research? Like
Yep.
they're making that determination that like that increment is equal to.
Yep.
Okay.
And so they get their beginning from where that diagnostic assessment is when they first log in to the last assessment or task that they do. And obviously some of our students aren't completing the full suite of assignments, but where they stopped, they were working at that level. Okay. So when it comes to the district perception of effectiveness, this is a huge improvement from last year. I wish I had that right here. I don't have it right now. Oh, I do down here. 73% of districts agreed that the home-based learning program was effective. We'll take that. You'll see down here that was a 40% increase from the first year of implementation to the second year of implementation. So schools felt more confident. They saw the benefits. We had better connections with schools on our end and Waterford as well to make sure that it was more effective across the board. The number 1 key observation is really effectively executing this program is a challenge, because we have to connect with the districts, and then we share that information with Waterford once we have parent consent and all those pieces. And then they upload students from our data into the platform, but then parents have to get on and sign on at home. So they send out flyers, they have a coach, they have a liaison to help them connect. And sometimes I had daughters that are in this age group. And sometimes it's just hard to do the one more thing at home is the biggest thing we hear from families. Like they're 6 years old and they work 6 hours already, and then after school program, and they're just done at the end of the day. So that's just some of it. But none of it is like completely damning by any means in terms of doing it. It's just the challenge of actually doing it is what the feedback's telling us. It's not that they don't like the platform, what it brings, the opportunities there, but it was definitely, that was part of the challenge with home-based learning. Okay, So one question that we were asked both by legislators in the last interim committee, but that we've been asking districts along the way is, what are the implementation challenges you're having that's you're doing it and it's still hard, or you would do it, but you can't because of these barriers. So when it comes to the Jumpstart program, the total commitment of 120 hours over 4 weeks, and this is not our language, this is what was submitted by districts. It's hard for your primary age students to do that. And again, every district does a little bit different. And then you have to calculate your lunchtime in there, recess time, like the non-instructional versus instructional. And it's a long day in the summer too. So that it hindered actually getting students to even sign up, even if they were eligible to do it based on districts' feedback. Some districts, and now this one again, it's based on their feedback. Some programs launched too soon after the regular school year, so it didn't give the districts time to either get, like, staff needs a break. I know when I ran a summer program, they took 2 to 3 weeks off minimum so that our teachers could breathe, and then we came back after that. And sometimes they couldn't maybe fit those hours in and still get that, or they just didn't have staff to do that. Which leads into the next. It's hard to find staff, transportation in the summer, which is not one that I think I necessarily anticipated myself, getting students to and from. And then making sure they had staff for that small group instruction, if that's how they chose to run the program. And then parental engagement was another indicated challenge. So families struggling getting them there daily. And it could be if they're done with their program at 2, mom or dad or like they don't have someone to then transfer them to the next childcare situation they have for the summer, especially for our early learner. I know that's personally would be a challenge. I live 22 miles from town, so moving one kid from one place to the other, I know that's a common thing. And then attendance and recruitment, really making sure you get kids there consistently so they get those hours and then maintain them being there throughout it. And then other summer camps, I know some like Missoula, you guys have so many opportunities for summer camps across the summer and things like that. So I'm sure that was a challenge there as well. And so we did ask for districts to do ooh, that's way too much, calm down, a Likert scale of perceived challenges. This yellow is agreed that it's a challenge, gray is neutral, and the blue disagreed it's a challenge. So first one, was it a challenge for your district in terms of facility for Jumpstart program? So across the different districts, 16% said yes, 6 said no, 78% said that wasn't as much of a challenge. Schools are mostly open in the summer, so that's good. Instructional materials, finding those instructional materials, 25% agreed yes, it was a challenge. And then 14 and 61 disagreed. Staffing, 25% of our district said it was a challenge. 15 disagreed that it was a challenge. Funding, because of when this funding comes, it is way after the fact. Lori could probably speak more to when that actually comes up in your school budget, but it's not for many months. So they have to be able to float that on the front end, and you're going through the middle of a fiscal year too, which is really fun to account for when that fiscal year ends June 30th, and then you start a new one on July 1. So lots of math involved in that. But that is one of the largest ones. And then also if it's enough funding. This doesn't specify and separate out. Is it just funding, or is it when the funding's coming? Is it, yeah, all those pieces. And then I was surprised that recruitment of students was actually the highest challenge on that one. Yes, Karen.
Just a quick question. Were these the 98 school districts that actually participated, or the full set?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
On this, yes, this one was. Thank you. Yes. Thanks for that clarification. Yes.
Hey, Marie, can I just ask you to go through these next couple ones kind of quickly so we can do a wrap up?
Absolutely. Can I just go down here? I'll go to the classroom. Is it already? Wow, I talked too much today. Okay.
No, it's all great. It's all great. I'm not trying to rush you at all.
No, I always talk too fast. We know that. Okay, so when it comes to classroom-based challenges, across the board, you see recruitment of students was 11% agreed it's a challenge. Instructional materials, 19%, student attendance, 20, staffing, 21, facilities, 21, and then funding, 34. So remember, yes, they do get full A and B for that, but no upfront funding again for that classroom base is one of those considerations as well. There's some other that you've already read already. And then home-based learning, much different than last year. So the biggest one that we're seeing across the board is that student participation and actually getting that student to log on and do the program, which of course is tied directly to parent engagement. Family feedback, really strong family feedback. We had 334 parents complete a survey for us, which is a big deal. That's a great end count for us. And 98% of those had positive feedback on the classroom-based program outcomes. This one's specific to classroom-based. And then I'll let you read through those pieces. We had some really great testimonials from Shoto, Anaconda, and Kalispell, kind of trying to spread it out on what that meant for their students. So I just love hearing that voice being spread throughout that piece. And then it's going to look like next year. And I know there's more to come, and numeracy will be a whole nother data collection piece that we'll be doing here now that we actually have those in play. And I can stop now.
Thank you, Marie. It's all good. We were all asking tons of questions throughout it. So, you know, it's perfect. It all works out. But I'm going to go ahead and in the about 10 minutes that we have remaining, I'm going to turn it back over to McCall. Do you want to kind of talk about why we're here having this conversation and the charge and where we want to go from here?
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. And Marie, I do want to just give you guys a big kudos on that report. I think it has a lot of really good information in it. And I think at the September meeting, the legislature is going to be really excited to see all of the good information you guys have collected and will present to them. So good job to you guys on that. At the last interim committee meeting, and Caitlin, you were there, Doug, you were there. I'm sure others were there as well. Marie, you were there. There were some questions from the Education Interim Committee and their requests for recommendations on, like, where do we go next? You know, what are some things that they can be doing from the legislative side to really help, you know, progress and make better this legislation? I was a little hesitant to provide recommendations from this group, specifically because your charge is to provide us recommendations. And, you know, I think it'd be fine for this group to, you know, as a follow-up from this report to, you know, really sort of share some learnings and findings, like based on what we're seeing, you know, what can we share with the committee? Like, what are things they should be considering? I think if they want to move forward, I think that should come from OPI. I think that could be coming from the board and in partnership with OPI and the legislature. But I hesitate on sending formal recommendations from this council, and I'll be the one that gets in trouble for that when I go in front of them in September. But I would rather share with them, you know, some learnings and findings that we came up with based on the report. And Caitlin and I have been talking about this too. There's going to be a number of other organizations that are going to be coming up with recommendations for them based on what they're seeing, you know, from the last couple of years of the information. So I'll turn it back to Caitlin. She's going to facilitate sort of the conversation. And I know we have only a few minutes, but I did want to just sort of set the stage and let you all know sort of where I was coming from, and, you know, certainly didn't want to put anyone else in a tough position, but I just I felt a little uncomfortable with the ask that they were sort of putting on this council, and didn't want to put anyone in a tough position. So just wanted to share that with all of you. But again, still thinking that we could share something with them.
Yeah. So what we were thinking, given that, we thought what would be helpful is if we could just have a little conversation here and maybe just put on your, you know, advisory council hat of like, what are you seeing overall in this report that you think would be important for us to lift up as that like next step feedback to the committee? And then if there's other recommendations that I know were, you know, like McCall said, there were a few of us that were in that meeting too, and there were we were asked to provide some other recommendations. So if there's other things that might not fit within the purview of like what we want to lift up, but like more specific recommendations, like there's the Montana Early Learning Alliance, and there's some other, you know, there's other groups and spaces where we could help to uplift those recommendations for this meeting. But just for the time being, I think we're just curious to know, you know, maybe there's like 2 or 3 things that isn't, you know, advisory council we want to be able to lift up to the awareness of the committee about what we're seeing within this report. So with that, does anyone have any initial thoughts?
Shocker, I do.
Yeah.
Two things that stand out to me. One, as Marie pointed out, man, what a fantastic report, Marie. Well done. I mean, really well done. But it's very limited time. And so to use that report for any major decision, I think would be inappropriate. We need more time. I feel very positive about the report. And I think if we're seeing any positive movement with such a limited time, just give us more time. Next step shouldn't be additional requirements, shouldn't be additional expectations. It should be let what we got going work. Don't keep putting more stuff on. If we really want schools to buy in and get on board and improve outcomes for our youngest, most vulnerable learners, give us some more time. We're proving to you in small increments it's working. Please let us keep doing it. Number two, if we're going to add stuff and we're going to continue to impact, and I say this very respectfully and hesitantly, let's just make it available to all learners. And let's not put these eligibility requirements on. So that, again, I'm grateful for the legislature. I'm grateful for the funding we've received. Evergreen has participated 100% in all three programs, both years, plus the literacy grant. We're doing all we can. And I'm grateful that we have this opportunity. But if they're going to put more and more on, let's make it eligible for all. So thank you. Leave it alone for a little bit. Let it have time. If you want more parameters, let it be eligible for all kids. That's my thought.
I think that's a great point, Lori, especially the part where the whole intent of all of this work was an early intervention perspective to see long-term gains. And so the report is showing increased participation across districts, and it's also seeing incremental gains both in the scores and outcomes, but that the state needs more time to be able to truly embrace all of that. I think that was very well put. And of course, it's like, if we don't take advantage of opportunities to minimize barriers and to make it more accessible to all families, we would be foolish. So we may continue to get shot down, but if we stop saying that, I think that that's a disservice to the council and our expertise and why we've been invited to be here. So I appreciate the way you put that, Lori. That was very well stated.
I would just like to second or third Lori and Christine on both those ideas and those comments. I do think that spoke to Marie's comment in the report of, if they didn't get accepted in one place, they went to the town next door and got accepted in the other place, right? So like, what is the real thing that's going on here, and how does privilege play into who is actually getting accepted into these programs based on if their parents go to multiple places? So just gonna name that, but I love this work. This is very exciting, and thank you for continuing to push and advocate for early intervention for all.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? I feel like this is a good list, but is there anything else that we should be recognizing or uplifting? I also just wanted to add, like, to that same point, and I agree with all this, but the just recognizing the lift that this has had for schools and the success in this being something that parents have to, it's voluntary as it is right now, but just it's very commendable to see not only the parents who are participating, but just how school districts have really, really rallied around this. I think that's just so important to highlight. This is it's a big lift, and people have really.
It's a significant number of hours and human resources to make this happen. And so just, continue to acknowledge that with funding in arrears that doesn't cover the full cost. And so I think it's huge. I mean, we're running into, we're in the red totally for this program. So, but still grateful.
Is there something that, and based on what we saw in the report too, about sort of the funding questions, I mean, is there something that we could say, a finding is that, school districts are spending a lot of money on the front end.
Yep.
I think it's hard, McCall, because I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, but that's how education is. It's set up that way for every level. So to go and ask for something different for this one seems disingenuous there, because we don't get money for the first graders we're serving till the next year either. And sometimes it doesn't cover the first grade teachers, right? Because those teachers are topped out at the highest end of the scale with master's degrees. And so it turns out in our district, two of our most veteran long-term teachers at the end of the scale and are doing our early literacy. So we're going to be upside down. If it was our youngest, newest, least experienced, it'd be the other way. We're not upside down in other grades. So I think we have to be really careful if we want eventually for this to be a program that's accessible to all, not to ask for a different way of funding it than we do for first grade, because that's how first grade is funded as well, and which is not optional. So I just think
Seamlessly integrate it. Yep.
I just want to be careful. I do want more money, but I want money for all of them.
Yeah.
So I want to be careful acting like, hey, you should be giving us money to cover this cost, but we don't get full cost for second grade if we have expensive teachers there. So I just think it's a slippery slope. I would be more interested in universal than I would be changing the formula or upfront, because that's just how school is funded. And as the legislature continues to hopefully improve school funding on a whole, we'll see that impact our earliest learners as well.
I'd say the only thing that I have to add that's evident in the report is the upfront funding. And then also with the class size ratio, it's important to note where that threshold is, which this committee did really hard discussions about where that is. And we set it up intentionally to align with research, but it does take more adult capacity across the board for your classroom base. So as it should developmentally, so.
And that's where it does take more resources. What about the other finding just around workforce? I know we're at the 3 o'clock hour, but are there any recommendations that we'd want to lift up around workforce or professional development?
Well, I would just always continue to say that institutes of higher ed are committed to and continue to grow our enrollment around P3 and elementary education, and just thinking about that understanding that elementary education prepared teachers are also because they could be working with 4-year-olds, our curricula and kind of our common course numbers, just like our teacher ed programs. This is not coming out eloquent, Caitlin, you'll just don't think of it the way that I'm saying it right now, but just thinking about higher ed and teacher education has responded. So understanding and recognizing across all content areas too, that working with young children, 4-year-olds and in those early primary grades is really unique and special. And that is changing the way that we're thinking about our teacher ed programs, even if it's just in additional kinds of reading, some of these case studies that you're talking about, AmPen, sharing those stories of what the realities are of working with young children and supporting their families in that way. And so higher ed is responding thoughtfully and supporting that that expertise both at the P3 and at the LED level. I can speak on that behalf certainly at MSU and know that these are conversations that are happening in teacher ed across the board.
I know we're past our time. So McCall, do you want to wrap us up, or what do you think about for next
Sure.
step?
Yeah, if you guys think of anything else that you'd like me to include, please let me know. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I anticipate they'll ask for some information, which I'm happy to share sort of these 2 points and relate them both back to this report and share that we had this meeting. The next meeting for the Education Interim Committee is on September 14th. It'll be on their website if you guys are interested in watching. Certainly, if you have any questions about it, please let us know. There's no one online, so I'm not going to take public comment. Do you guys have any questions or anyone want to say anything else before we hop off?
Just let us know if you need anybody to be there or do anything for that interim.
Awesome. I will certainly do that. Okay, thanks.